Alright, so we got Bear Trap. And naturally during Bear Trap, you can do a mix march like that, right? Or you can go out and get balance. And this is what I like to use. I don't like to send as much infantry. Mix is like, it's good for like where maybe you don't know what you're sending. Maybe you're just in a rush. Right now, obviously, you can see that I'm running into an issue where I've run out of troops. And this is a common problem, especially for those of you out there that, like me, you get hit, you get zeroed, and you become less efficient during bear because you don't have any troops. I know your pain. I know it all too well. So, obviously, you'll have a good couple runs, but one thing that you can do is you can make sure that you have all of your bonuses turned on. I like to, so like for example, enemy health, you can turn that on. March speed and troop lethality is not as big of a deal. Here you can increase troop attack, might as well. And you can increase squad capacity, there's no reason not to. As for rally capacity, no reason not to. Of course, I've done it after the fact, but you kind of get the idea. And as far as like what you want to do in terms of stats, if you really want to buff it, just pop a 2000 on lethality. You can, if you want, increase health, but I don't like burning my gems like crazy, so I just do lethality. And that's usually enough. I don't really need to do much more than that, normally anyway. So once that's been done, and you've done all of those, and of course, I'm doing all my daily stuff too, guys, so don't mind me. I'm just kind of trying to do catch up here. I've kind of fallen behind a little bit. But yeah, I mean, the main thing here is, oh boy, well, this will be fine, I guess. All right, so going back to bear here. All right, so of course you always want to try and put like the best possible rally leads closest to the bear, and let everybody you just want to have reinforced. Now, obviously, like I do pretty well, but I'm far enough away that it's kind of neither here nor there. I'm not trying to be efficient. That is what I'm trying to get at here. This is by no means super efficient by any stretch of the imagination. But the main thing with bear is obviously you try to get as many points. I'm already like 10 minutes late into this, so I haven't even gotten any points yet. And you can see time is of the essence here. If you want to get a high ranking score in bear, you really have to be pretty consistent, sending as many rallies as you possibly can, and you've got to be pretty Johnny on the spot. Now as far as the actual bear itself goes, I mean, like I said, most of the damage that I've ever done has always been strictly, it's kind of limited by, so like here you can see I've got 2.9 mil. And you might be thinking like, well, geez, you literally have the lowest ranking. Well, that would be because that was a mixed march. Okay, so compare every other march from that mixed march to every other march, and you're going to see a substantial difference. Because again, now the biggest issue here is like, this is what I have left, right? There's not enough troops, to do any damage. It's all infantry, right? But like if we look at, say, this march, 9.4. If we look at the other march, 8.1. The other march, 4 to 4.2, that's still about what I would expect. But again, like a large portion of where all that damage is going is getting lost, in part because I don't have any troops. So a lot of these are like really poor scores because I don't have the proper amount of marksmen or lancers. You really can't do a ton of damage if you're just sending infantry, and so that's part of the problem, right? And that's also kind of why I stress like, balancing here is helpful if you're able to actually afford it. Otherwise mixes may actually work out to be a little bit better for you because you don't have as many troops to have. So that's the thing. It's like you become extremely reliant on what you have available, and that's problematic for a number of reasons. Of course, I could go out and heal like all this infantry, and it's like a 3-day timer, but I just kind of figured my infirm was going to be full anyway, so not a big deal. Like, I'm not going to stress it. I could sit there and micromanage, like, 1K and pop heals and have helps like a dozen times, and it would take like a good hour, but I just don't have the patience. And now that I've already committed to it, I'm not going to change what I've done. But yeah, I mean, as far as Bear's concerned, I mean, that's really kind of where a lot, like, the stickler is really with a lot of it. Like, even though I can send like a full march of infantry like that, I guarantee you it's not going to do that well at all. And it's kind of unfortunate, but, like, if you look at a rally I did, they're 31 mil. Not bad on points at all. It's doing really well. But again, you look at all my other marches, and I'm getting the lowest score. And that's just because not having enough marksman and not enough lancer really does tremendously lower your ability to do damage during bear. And so, in many ways, this is, I love to stress the fact that infantry here is more of a fluff. You need some of it, but it's definitely by no means what's going to get you all that damage on the bear. And if you're wanting to do a lot of it, you really need lethality, and you need, as much attack as you can pull off in marksman and lancer to really find yourself getting anywhere with bear in particular, because it's an absolute must. But even here, you can see I've got kind of a round robin type style of mess here, and I can send mixes and kind of show you we'll see how many mixes I can get in here. I mean, obviously it's a 15-minute timer, 5 minutes to 2 minutes, in between each march. It's like we've got probably enough room for another set of marches, so I can show you what mixed marches are going to do for us. I mean, in terms of what you gain from it, I think it just really depends. If you're like starting out and you just got started playing the game, the main thing that I would stress on here is pay very close attention to, like, when you go to the skills tab, the top right will have stun, enemy damage down, and damage up. And what you'll notice is a lot of these stun chances and stuff like that are not going to be as helpful, as you're going to be getting some damage, sure, but, like, I typically like to jump all over the fact that, like, if you look at this damage up, for example, that's going to do more damage, right? Like, yes, defense and HP are going to be helpful, but stun chances are kind of like a dime a dozen type deal, where damage up is kind of a harder thing to come by. And so I think for most people starting out, like, Jesse's going to be your #1 pick. You won't really want to bother with, like, Gina if you're trying to save stamina. I think you're worrying too much. Like, if anything, getting more attack is going to be helpful. But like any of the rare heroes, you can see none of those actually provide you any expedition skills. But, somebody like Jasser or Jesse are going to give you that damage up that you're going to need. So I just stress that because it's important. It's something that you want to make sure you pay very close attention to when you're sending marches, because otherwise you're just kind of doing yourself a disservice. Now, at this point, like, that march is already full, so we're not going to bother. We want to try and join in the ones that are not full, and we'll just send some mixed marches, and we'll compare what we just did, really, basically, and just kind of show off what a difference that actually made. So, looking at, what we sent, again, top score there, 4.1 there, 15 mil there, 5.2 mil there, and then that last march was 945. Now, if I'm correct, right, and you compare that balance where it's heavily leaning towards more marksman and lancer and 20% infantry, it's simply because the marksmen and lancers are going to do more damage. There's not really anything complicated about it. Now, like, here you can see, like, those are obviously not going to be as helpful as, say, like, if I had used Jasser here, and then maybe I throw in, these two fluff heroes. The main thing is the captain flag dictates what skills actually going to be used, as far as captain skills go. So, like, using Jasser here makes more sense. And we'll go ahead and just send a rally, and we'll see what we pull off in damage. And again, just sending a mixed march, basically, because that's all we've got really room for. Of course, we do have some extra troops that we can throw in, but I think just to make things simple, trying not to muddy the waters too much here. But we'll just remember the march with Gucci is going to be all infantry and Fahim. So Fahim is getting all my leftovers. And again, I'm not going to stress too much when I'm joining those rallies. Yes, I'm not sending the best possible heroes. And if I wanted to do that, I could get more finicky with it, but I just don't really bother. There's always more efficiencies, not like anything, guys. But okay, so like if we compare this, you know, 0.7, and that was on a mixed march. And that was, you know, performative by all means. You could still kind of get an idea of what you've achieved, but you don't really see it very easily. It really won't be apparent until we see the other marches. Go ahead and... So like this one here, we're sending a lethality-based infantry hero. So one of the things that's a little, I don't know, kind of tricky with Gen 5 is Gen 5, we get damage taken down, damage up, and marksman damage up. Which, as you may remember, I told you that damage up, especially a marksman, would probably be fairly helpful, plus damage up. So Hector's kind of an exception where it's like, you know, it's not necessarily the rule by any means, right? I mean, you can't just immediately assume infantry heroes are bad for this reason. Like, yes, they are not going to be a huge bonus, but it's more the skills than it is anything else. And anything that's going to buff the amount of damage your marksmen are doing or your lancers are doing is basically going to token in more damage. I mean, basically the only two stats that really matter here are lethality and attack in regards to marksmen and lancers. Outside of that, there's not really a whole lot of, you know, like, you don't really need to stress too much. And I know some of you guys are probably watching this video and you're like, dude, I don't have balance. Where the hell is that? Where do you get that at? You got to get to furnace like 19, I think. And then when you get to furnace 19, I believe it unlocks so you can actually see the balance tab. So don't sweat it. You'll eventually get it. It's just not something you're going to get right out of the gate. But I'm sure some people will probably be like, dude, I don't have a way to balance. How do I know what I'm sending? And that's the, you know, the beauty of this game is that you will eventually get to there, but it will take you some time. But again, so like there, a mixed march is 13 mil. You know, it's still top of the charts by all means. You know, compared to like where we were earlier, where we were doing kind of meh. But see, the thing is where one march I was sending like the best possible for the score, the other one I've evened it out. And so by doing that, I've actually increased the number of marches I can send that have marksmen in them. And therefore, I'm actually going to be doing more than likely pretty good score across the board. You know, so whenever you're starting out, I would say your mixed marches are going to do you a lot of good for this reason, because you don't have a ton of like one type unit types to really maximize the damage. Now, when you do, then yeah, it makes more sense to actually make the balanced marches, because you'll have consistency in the amount of troops that you're able to actually send. But yeah, so like here, this one with female son, another 6.9. And again, it's just consistency compared to where, you know, you're sending like all in one type. And it all has to do with the fact that, you know, where in one situation I have maybe one or two really good marches, this time around I'll have a bunch of decent marches, you know. And so in that way, it kind of prevents you from finding yourself in situations where maybe you could have done better. But, you know, by all means, there's always more efficiencies I can tack on here. I mean, obviously the heroes portion of this, you can see how, you know, I've been just sending whatever, you know, it's not, I'm not really stressing too much on what heroes I'm sending. I mean, you can get, you know, pretty tacky with it with Bear, and you can like get that finicky with it, I think, but fundamentally, as long as you're getting the actual troops out, then you're going to do a ton of damage. But like here, where again, this is that march with male son, you can see why that march with Fahim does so poorly. It's just infantry, you know, and all infantry just does not do any damage, hardly at all, you know. So it's definitely not something you want to focus in on. If you get anything from Bear Hunt, it's that sending all infantry is not going to give you a very favorable score in Bear Hunt at all. But hopefully that was helpful for you guys, and maybe you gathered at least some knowledge out of it. But again, the main thing is looking at your hero skills, making sure that, you know, whether you're sending, like, you know, you might have noticed I was, you know, just kind of blind shooting this. Well, it's damage up. You know, down it's attack up. It's enemy damage taken down. It's still going to be substantially better than, you know. Now, if I look at like Natalia, it becomes a little bit questionable, but it's still better, right? Those are still good stats, and they're not going to be doing a whole lot of harm. And the other thing too is you have to consider not only their skills, but also you got to really think in terms of degeneration too, because the core actual damage that you gain is going to vary. Like, you see how Expedition is 444 here? But like if I compare that to like a Gen 1, it's 200. That's the other thing too. You also want to consider the generation of hero you're sending, because that's going to have a big factor in how well your damage is going to do. In any case, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.